Alright, time travel is not only often confusing, but it can have very weird, dire consequences for the themes of stories, because it can potentially refocus what the message itself is. And the X-Men movie serves as a particularly weird sort of example of this. It's comprised of 7 movies and 6 spin-offs, which are occupied by 3 smaller brands. Additionally, time travel is used as an in-universe reboot, so the main films can also be split into 2 series. So this means characters, events, and time periods inconsistently overlap, therefore it's a weird puzzle of sorts when trying to untangle character arcs. Some characters were lucky enough to have fairly functional, straightforward arcs like Magneto and Logan because they have fairly decisive endings.
Long time ago, you saved my life.
But Charles Xavier is like the unluckiest dude ever because he's in both Logan and Dark Phoenix, so he has 2 rather bleak endings. So I kinda wanna try and untangle Xavier's character arc through the lens of understanding what time travel did to the X-Men franchise, how it changed it. Additionally, I'm also going to use the sociology of charismatic leaders to create a consistent analytical interest because, as Max Weber outlined, there are 3 forms of authority: traditional authority, which is power from historical guidelines and structures; bureaucratic authority, which is power from legal systems and merit; and charismatic authority, which is when power is simply from the individual's innate character and personality. Therefore, it's not about the external factors, but sheer individual imagination and confidence, which totally fits with Xavier's story and character arc. So I'm going to use the relationship between Xavier and his dream to structure the discussion of time travel. I'm getting confused already, goddammit.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
So unlike the other character essays, it's not possible to reverse engineer Charles Xavier's themes from his ending, therefore the anchor point will have to come from the middle.
I'll do my best.
Your best is enough.
The journey of Xavier's life is what defines him, not the destination, and Savetta and Todorov's theory will be utilized to play around with it. He argued that narratives are like fictional environments, which begins at a status quo, then suffers from a disruption, and then finds itself a new status quo. In contrast to Joseph Campbell's work, this theory places higher analytical importance on the situation as opposed to the role or agency of the protagonists themselves. Therefore, immediately it's far more relevant because, for poor Xavier, he's not the agent of change here. Instead, it's the effects of time travel. Bom 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 bom. The first state is the equilibrium, which is the established status quo, and the first X-Men trilogy in First Class broadly fits here because there's a recognizable simple balance to the world. X-Men 1 opens with the Holocaust, and the same boy who angrily moved metal becomes the leader of a revolution motivated by hatred and fear.
I've heard these arguments before.
However, the other man to rebuke his position is a bold dude in a wheelchair.
It's a long time ago. Mankind has evolved since then.
Xavier and Eric aren't really characters on the stage, they're portrayed as abstract, larger-than-life representative of ideas. In X-Men 1, Magneto seeks to turn everyone into mutants, even if it kills them. X2 features Stryker trying to wipe out all mutants, and then Magneto trying to wipe out all humans, and Last Stand focuses on a cure that can turn all mutants into humans. The stories are always about who has the power to move the boundaries of collective mutant and human identity. Therefore, this is a battle of imagination more than anything, because whoever provides the most enticing vision wins.
Mr. President, this is not a threat. This is an opportunity. What you are about to tell the world is true. This is a moment. A moment to repeat the mistakes of the past, or to work together for a better future. We're here to stay, Mr. President.
Hate and power, or compassion and cooperation. Xavier dies, but his memory and dreams live on, with his school and literally in a different body somewhere.
Charles.
He's more than a man, he's a symbol. Therefore, X-Men First Class, despite functioning as a prequel, fits within this equilibrium stage because its conflict is so familiar. Shaw tries to get the Americans and Russians to blow each other up so mutants will reign supreme in a post-nuclear world. In this story, Eric is deconstructed and humanized as a tragic man seduced by power and fear.
Everything you did made me stronger.
However, Xavier isn't, because even as a boy he was a perfect idealistic paragon. Instead, it's inferred that he was made more enlightened because he could listen to everyone else's mind and become more empathetic. On one hand, this simplicity is used to keep the films focused on what X-Men is, identifiably about, but on the other hand, it only lasts for this section of the franchise. What follows is changes on a massive thematic level.
If all the world knew about mutants, I felt it was the best thing for her.
Good for you.
It didn't really matter what was best for me.
Stage 2 is the disruption of the ordered, and artistically, Days of Future Past fulfills this stage because the internal logic of the story is thrown into complete disarray by a new narrative component: time travel.
What?
The two positions of fear and hope are no longer ideological concerns, but an existential one, because Xavier and Eric's positions are no longer grounded by fear of the what if, but by the knowledge of the what will.
Eric was right. Humanity does this to us.
Not if we show them a better path.
For example, Xavier and Hank has a philosophical back and forth throughout the film where
It's like a river. You can throw a pebble into it, create a ripple, but the current always corrects itself.
Xavier adapts his dream by saying,
Just because someone stumbles, loses their way, doesn't mean they're lost forever. Enough ripples, and you change the tide.
Charles isn't just speaking of the actions of other people like Jennifer Lawrence and Eric, but he's also talking about himself. His personal fight is no longer about simply supporting equality and cooperation, but also proving to himself that he's got free will.
My grandfather planted that tree when he was 5 years old. I used to swing from the branches of it myself.
Does that mean I'm expelled?
Oh, on the contrary. You're enrolled.
Therefore, Days of Future Past does for Xavier what First Class did for Eric. It humanizes the man underneath the idea by breaking him down and putting him back together, while also subtly reframing the entire story so it's no longer about a never-ending war, but it's all about free will.
Oh, I'm not the man I was.
Therefore, X-Men Apocalypse very, very loosely follows the recognition stage because Xavier has seen what is wrong, and that knowledge is baked into all his actions now. For example, he went from suppressing the Phoenix and Jean in one lifetime to ordering her to unleash it. He freaking punches Apocalypse in the face. He undoes his mind wipe with Mora. In the conversation from X-Men 1, where Eric challenges Charles' optimism, is completely flipped. Because Eric is no longer threatening Charles with his pessimism, he's now instead rather sincerely concerned.
What do you do when you wake up to that?
What do you do when you wake up to that?
But Charles is now the one who's ominously threatening his potential enemies.
With a great swell of pity for the poor soul who comes to that school.
And a great swell of pity for the poor soul that comes to my school looking for trouble.
The X-Men are also trained to fight Sentinels, which on one hand is, a very fun, nostalgic image that will get the audience clapping, but it's also symbolic of how militant Charles has become. He's literally focused on fighting the future. Dark Phoenix is very explicitly Stage 4, where Xavier has attempted to repair the damage made by the disruption. He attempts to preserve a culture of trust with the humans by dangerously risking his X-Men into space and suppressing Jean's trauma.
You told me my father was dead, and you used me for my powers.
No, that's just not true. That's not what happened.
Although the whole Alien Phoenix Force stuff is very confusing because it's not Insider anymore, instead it's an alien life form, and it's not really his fault because was there any fair way to expect aliens?
What entered you in space was not a solar flare. And it was not an accident.
But regardless, the point is, Xavier's militant and borderline Machiavellian attitude has made him unknowingly indulgent, cold, impatient, and alienating with his own people.
Costumes and smile and pictures
That
to make
is a
everyone
small
feel
price
safe
to pay for keeping the peace.
by risking our people to save theirs.
Yes, yes.
The depressing irony is that Xavier's attempt to repair the situation has made him the disruption, because The person driven by the most troublesome fear isn't Eric, but him. Subsequently, the ending of Dark Phoenix and the entirety of Logan serves as the final stage, the new equilibrium. On one hand, Logan provides a deeply bleak answer to the existential debate raised in Days of Future Past, where the tide can't be changed, mutants will always be wiped out. There are positive ripples, like the mutants this time aren't being brutally massacred, but are peacefully taken out by tempered mass-produced foods.
Random mutancy went the way of polio.
Charles himself has killed much of the X-Men by accident. He's treated as a crazy old codger by being shoved in a water tower resembling Cerebro, and his last words, which refers to the boat that Logan wanted to buy for their retirement, is kind of very poetically and sadly used to encapsulate Xavier's entire life.
You never have to steal again.
He was a man chasing a dream and became a prisoner of its impossibility.
You still have time.
Charles, the world is not the same as it was.
Dark Phoenix, in contrast, actually has a much more optimistic evaluation, because Xavier's pessimism is shown to be inappropriate and misguided for the reason that, despite losing his line to the president and the return to a culture of fear with the mutants, the world will simply keep going on. Mutant safety can be held up by others, people that can treat Xavier's dream with more accuracy to his original intentions, like in the original trilogy.
How's retirement treating you?
Therefore, the tide has changed from the ripples, which is anchored by the friendly chess game between Charles and Eric, echoing X-Men 1's ending, but this time it's Eric visiting a metaphorically imprisoned Charles.
Not today, thank you.
The constant battle of ideas from the original trilogy is completely diffused. This is a rather oddly happy ending. These two endings are not necessarily mutually exclusive, because Dark Phoenix technically happens way before Logan, despite being released afterwards. However, the new equilibriums they present are so thematically opposing that I think it's best to treat them as two fundamentally different stories, especially when Charles in Logan references pre-time travel stuff, and it's like, wait, what?
When I found you, you were pursuing a career as a cage fighter.
Because I was sent here for you.
Well, tell whoever it was that sent you that I'm busy.
As Healy-defined, leadership is determined by an individual's exceptional qualities that are not accessible to the ordinary person. And to go deeper into Xavier's rather miserable life, his exceptional quality is his power as a dreamer, because people don't just follow him because of his technical knowledge, but in his positive imagination and ability to manage a collective vision of an entire generation of people.
Is everything all right?
Yes, I think it will be.
Xavier unlocked Logan's mind not with answers from his past, but by showing him a whole other world, a future to set his mind to. And in Days of Future Past, Xavier meets himself to be reminded of this. His role is what defines him, and for him, that's a form of emancipation. But as scholars like Eisenstadt and Nadler and Tushman argued, charismatic leaders are often persuasive because they break away from tradition, but when the time for peace arrives, that's when Xavier's role diminishes. Charles's rejection of the widely accepted culture of fear is what makes him a great leader of change, but also a danger to peace. And the tragedy of it all is that, in the end, he either outlives his dream, or his dream outlives him. In conclusion, I don't know, I got nothing. I feel like that last bit that I said was more of a better way to end it.
You've got a son?
Yes.
Does he have a husband?